she has no respect for the sanctity of marriage. And I'm not going to get into a same-sex marriage discussion here, folks. You have same-sex marriages that you have people that are loyal and devoted to each other and stick to their vows, and then you have ones where they don't, just like you do with straight marriages. So, I'm not even going to get into that discussion. It's the fact that she does not respect the sanctity of marriage. She claims to be religious, yet she supports killing children and is willing to commit adultery, and it doesn't matter to her. And she's supposedly a Christian. Folks, I'm not a Christian, but I know that's wrong. So, take that for whatever you mean. Then at the same time, good old Davis has been coming out and trying to slam Greg Abbott's education policies. Well, PolitiFact and the the Dallas Morning Star and several other news agencies have gone and dug in and looked at almost every statement she has made about Abbott's policies on education and his actions and the way he's voted and what he stood for and stood against, and found out that every claim that Davis has made has been less than true. Some of it's been partly false, some of it's been mostly false, and some of it's been pants on fire. So we already know that she's willing to lie about her opponent's stance on education while trying to push her own. So if she's going to lie about her opponent's stance, is she lying about her own stance as well? Probably. So everybody's kind of wondering, what is Greg Abbott's stance? Well, he's got several parts to his plan, but we're going to hear from in his own words what his part of it is.
Higher education is one of the best ladders to success. The fourth part of my education plan focuses on getting more students graduating on time. We must increase online college learning opportunities and count successful completion of those courses toward degree requirements. It focuses on making higher education in Texas more affordable and reducing the crushing burden of student loan debt. We must help every Texan climb the ladder of success. For Texas to remain number one in the nation for job creation, Texas must become number one in the nation for higher education. If Texas is to continue to lead the nation in job creation, we must also lead the nation from pre-K 4 to 12 to college and beyond. My Educating Texans plan does just that.
So, he is a little bit vague in that. He says he has his plan and that his plan does that, this and that. So, keep in mind that that little statement from him isn't vague. But you know what? He's not in office yet. So it's kind of smart to be a little bit vague. Once he gets into the office as the governor, he'll have a little bit more access to more information, what's going on, and make better decisions and to refine that plan. But at least he has something that kind of makes sense. Now, on the flip side, Davis is a state-level senator and is currently one. She actually has had a say and seen a lot of the data as far as state-level education policies go. So she's actually worked on some of those. Oh, and as much as she stands out and says she doesn't like the standardized testing and the STAR tests and all that stuff, folks, she's full of it. Yeah, she's not a fan of the STAR tests. You want to know why? She wants Common Core made legal and made the law of the land here in Texas, and she's willing to do so through executive fiat if she gets elected governor. So all the work that Dan Patrick has done to, can't really say stop Common Core, but to at least make it very difficult for Common Core to do much here in Texas. Wendy Davis has done as much work to erode that wall that Dan Patrick has put up through his work and getting his fellow legislators to pass certain things. Wendy Davis is one of the reasons why we have iStation in Texas. And for those of you who don't know what iStation is, it's a reading program on the computer, and they have a home version, they have an in-school version, and it takes the place of a teacher of figuring out what your child's grade is going to be for reading. It judges how fast they're reading, Although it's really hard to do that if there's a slowdown in the baud rate, right? Yeah, it's not exactly accurate then. Or if there's a power failure in the middle of the child reading, what have you. Or if something else happens, the monitor flickers, or some little brat runs by and throws the mouse off to the side. Whatever. So we know that there's already some problems with the fact that it's on computer, and the fact that people read slower on a computer than they do a paper book. And that's a proven scientific fact because of the refresh rate. So we have those all going against this computer-based program. So it measures the speed, it measures the vocabulary. You know, what if the kid clicks the wrong button by accident on the computer? They can't exactly go back and change their answers like they can in a standard reading comprehension test. You can't really have that spoken verbal feedback like you can when you say, hey, what do you think this means? Okay, thanks, Janie. Johnny, what do you think it means? Okay, Kurt, do you agree with Johnny, or do you agree with Janie, or do you have your own views? You can't do that kind of discussion with iStation to get comprehension and get that, how they're forming their thoughts. So it's flawed on so many levels. So, yeah, there's my 2 cents against Common Core and against the Common Core assessment tool that's being used in Texas schools, by the way, called iStation. Well, it's not being used in my kid's school because my kid doesn't go to a standard public school. We got her out. Anyway, let's move on to other things that we can talk about. We've got a little bit over 10 minutes left here, folks. So let's move on to other subjects. Another thing that is kind of interesting and y'all need to kind of think about here is, and I reported this on Friday, and the actual information came out a couple of days prior, but I got access to it on Friday. I was a little bit slow on the reception side of my of the sourcing, but National Guard units in several states, including Ohio, Illinois, Hawaii, Guam, Delaware, and I think there's a couple others in there. And there's actually a growing number. There's a large number of them who have had to cancel their National Guard training in their states for the month of September. So the soldiers are not showing up. They're not getting credit, which means they're not getting paid. They're not getting the points towards their retirement or towards other things that they get, because folks, the way the National Guard works, it works on, I forget exactly what the acronym stands for, but they're called MUTAs or UTAs. And what that means is each day that you serve National Guard equals 2 days active duty. So you work a weekend, that equals to 4. You know, working your Saturday and your Sunday, that works out to 4 active duty days. And that's kind of what they get paid for, but it's also what they get credit for towards certain other things, like if they should choose to go active duty later on, or if they should be activated for a significant period of time. I'm not talking more than just a 6-month or a year-long deployment, but if they actually were activated for 2 or 3 years for some reason, those UTAs then add up, and then the active duty time, of course, is a day for a day. But that goes towards things like retirement benefits and VA benefits, et cetera, et cetera. So they're basically getting screwed out of some VA benefits or some points that would go towards to earning those benefits, as well as their pensions, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, like I said, the money. And in some cases, when they don't get their paycheck, there are some guardsmen who have tried to go on or try to get what's called TRICARE, which is a health insurance, and they count on that because they simply can't afford, things like Blue Cross, Blue Shield, et cetera, especially with Obamacare in there. Well, if they don't drill that weekend, then their policy doesn't get paid. So they can getting dropped from their health care over this. So there's so many other potential problems in there, and loss of benefits and everything, just from not drilling for that weekend. Because if the state cancels it, there is no makeup. If you miss it on your own, you can go and you can make it up by working, 4 half days during the week, or afternoons, or work it up on another weekend if they don't have drill, but some other unit does. You have to get permission and everything. You got to work it out, but you can arrange to do make-up time if your command is willing to work with you. But when the state has to cancel it, the command doesn't even have that option. So, well, they're not getting paid. And to top it off, they're not training, so they're not able to go and work on their skills. Granted, you think it's only 2 days a month, and sometimes 2.5 days, because they start on Friday afternoon, and it's a 5 muta weekend. It's not much practice, but it's practice. If you still pick up your guitar, if you learned how to play guitar when you were 5 or 6, and since you were like 6 years old and you stopped taking lessons, you still pick your guitar up once a month and played it for an hour or 2 or 3, you're still going to remember some of the basics on how to play. Same with like riding a bike. And the same goes with some of the soldier skills. The basics, at least, the fundamentals. As long as you're practicing them once a month, you're not going to lose them. They're not going to degrade too much. Then you have your 2 weeks in the summer, etc., etc. And some of the stuff, when you're National Guard, you actually have to practice on your own. You've got to maintain your own health and fitness. So you actually have to go and do your own exercise on your own. You usually don't have the morning exercise like you do in the regular Army. So they're out all this collective training, and they call it, going out and practicing doing the job that they would do if they were called up and had to fight a war. They're not being allowed to, folks. So what does that do? That degrades our national defense, and it also degrades the governor's abilities to respond to any kind of disaster, on the state level, be it natural or man-made. They still lack that tool for response to keep the people secured and safe. So, thanks to the cuts to the defense and the poor dispersion of funds by the executive branch, both on the federal level and within these states, these soldiers are getting screwed over. There's no other way to put it, folks. Because you have other states, the federal government has said, hey, you didn't use all your training funds, you actually budgeted wisely and frugally, and you have a little bit left over. Well, you have to give that stuff back, because we have these other ones who now cannot train, and we can't afford to pay the soldiers. So we have to take your money from you because you did the right thing to give to them who didn't want to do the right thing. We call it redistribution of wealth. We call it socialism. Think about it. Because these are, although it's federal funding combined with state funding that goes into the state funds for the National Guard, once that federal funding has entered the state, it is no longer federal money. It is now state money. So, just things to consider, folks. And like I said, some states actually were able to do the right thing and do the smart thing and budget properly and still be able to afford to completely train. In fact, some of them, like Texas, aren't only training, they had enough funding to be able to activate the National Guard soldiers and put them down near the border to try to deal with the influx of illegal immigrants and the drug cartels and human traffickers down there. So, on the flip side, speaking about defense, and speaking, of course, that means self-defense. Well, I'm not going to go on another Second Amendment rant here, folks. I'm not going to talk about how moms demand stupidity against every town for gun control. Let's be statists and take away everybody's right to self-defense groups. I'm not going to talk about them and their current campaign to destroy a private business, i.e. Kroger, from being able to decide whether or not they're going to allow lawfully and legally carried firearms within their on their property or not. I'm not going to talk about that. No. Y'all know how I feel about that. What we're going to talk about is over at Positively Republican, which is run by some of the same folks who run BuzzPo, the BuzzPo online magazine. they are having a, well, they have a poll out there. They have some curiosity going on. They want to know who your favorite gun manufacturer is. So if you go over to positivelyrepublican.com and look for the poll over there, let them know what your favorite gun manufacturer is. Guys, I'm going to tell you what mine is, or what I answered, because I own several different brands. I'm not going to go into everything I own. I'm not dumb. I'm not going to give away and tip my hand, but I am going to say that currently, I think my favorite pistol manufacturer is actually Car Arms, for certain reasons, and I'm not going to tell you what all those reasons are, but I like them. They win for pistols, but just barely, because it really depends on what you're using it for. When you're talking about range pieces, I love my Kimber. When you're talking about open carry self-defense, I love Glocks. When you're talking about concealeds, which is kind of my favorite area, I like my Car Arms. And I'm not saying what from Car Arms, because I may have multiples, but I do like the Car. I'm not saying that there aren't others out there that are almost as good, and it comes down to personal preference. That's for pistols. For self-defense rifles, I like Olympic Arms. I like a specific couple of variations of a model that they do. Olympic Arms. Now for hunting, different story. And if you want to talk hunting rifles, we can sit down over a beer or a hard apple cider and discuss that. This show is not a hunting show, folks. At least not yet. When hunting season opens, we may have a show or two talking about hunting. Don't know yet, because I haven't been hunting in Texas yet. Looking for, trying to hunt for our Thanksgiving meal this year. Kind of do things a little bit more traditional and different. Do it the way our founders did. And I'm not just talking about the founding fathers who wrote the documentation. I'm talking about the original settlers and pilgrims that came over to the New World, running away from the tyranny back home, looking to be able to raise their families in a more moral environment. Get away from some of the temptations of moral relevance and evil that were back in their home countries. And that's what a lot of them were doing. They were escaping prosecution, but they're also trying to escape that moral relevancy that we talked about earlier. So, looking at doing some hunting this year to kind of celebrate that, if we can. So that's those are my plans for this fall once hunting season opens up. In the meantime, folks, go ahead and, like I said, go over to Positively Republican, look up that poll, and while you're at it, go and head on over to BuzzPo. Look at some of the great articles that have come out this morning. Real quick, I'm going to give a rundown of one or two of them that are at the top. We have one about liberal politics leading to a black girl beating up another black girl. Interesting take on the subject. We have also have an article about scientists down in Florida warned not to touch a certain breed of caterpillar, and the reasons why may shock you. They might not. It may have been something you know all along, but it's an interesting thing to look at. So there's a couple of the other recent stories there on BuzzPo. And without further ado, folks, we are going to have to say goodbye for today, Monday. I know the show went by a little bit quicker than maybe we would have liked. But you can go ahead and catch the replay anytime you want. And, of course, leave your comments at the bottom. And we'll see you right back here tomorrow on Tuesday. This has been the end of the show for today, Monday, September 8th, 2014. And I have been your host, Paul-Gregory Matuszak. Been great talking to y'all. And don't forget to call in tomorrow. And we'll be right back here. So have a great day, folks. Bye-bye.